What if I told you that the biggest obstacle in finding two missing children might be the one person who claims he'll search for them for the rest of his life? Before you click away, before you think you know this story, let me tell you about a girlfriend, a fake black eye, and a pattern so disturbing that even people who believe in this man's innocence are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from, because what I'm about to reveal will make you question everything you thought you knew about missing persons cases. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because cases like this, cases that the mainstream media abandons, they need voices like ours to keep saying their names. Lilly Sullivan, 6 years old. Jack Sullivan, 4 years old. Missing since May 2nd. And their stepfather Daniel Martel might not be a suspect, but he's definitely sabotaging the very search he claims to champion. Let's start with something that happened just days ago, something that pulled back the curtain on who Daniel Martel really is. A woman named Taylor came forward. She was Daniel's girlfriend after Malaya, after the mother of the missing children left him. And Taylor did something bizarre. She faked a black eye, posted it online, claimed Daniel had hurt her. Then she admitted she made it up. She has mental health issues, that much is clear. But here's what nobody's talking about. Strip away Taylor's problems, strip away the fake bruise, strip away the drama, and what are you left with? A pattern. Taylor described her relationship with Daniel in terms that should make your blood run cold. Controlling. Isolating. Manipulative. She wasn't allowed to have male friends on social media. He monitored who she talked to. He made her feel like she couldn't exist without him. Now, if this was just one woman's story, maybe we could dismiss it. Maybe we could say she's unreliable, she faked a black eye after all. But it's not just one woman's story. Let me take you back further. Back to Malaya Brooks Mary, the mother of Lily and Jack. The woman who reported her children missing at 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd. The woman who has been criticized, questioned, and judged by thousands of people online. Malaya gave an interview to a content creator named Sunny, and in that interview she revealed something that echoes exactly what Taylor said. Daniel gave Malaya an ultimatum when she was pregnant with their daughter Meadow. He told her to drop her friends or he would leave her. He said her friends were a bad influence. So she did. She dropped them. He allowed her to talk to one friend, but they didn't talk often. Let that word sit with you for a moment. Allowed. He allowed her to talk to one friend. This is the language of control. This is the language of abuse. And it fits a profile that experts in domestic violence recognize immediately. If you're watching this and you've been in a controlling relationship, drop a comment. Say anything. Say where you're from. Say you understand. Because I want you to know you're not alone, and I want Daniel Martel to know that people see patterns. DT, a content creator who actually believes Daniel is innocent, who talks to Daniel regularly, who has given him the benefit of the doubt time and time again, even he admitted something crucial on his livestream. He said Daniel is a pretty douchey boyfriend. He said Daniel tries to isolate women, that he's jealous and controlling, that these are big red flags. 100%, he said. Big red flags, 100%. This is coming from someone who thinks Daniel had nothing to do with the disappearance of Lily and Jack. Even Daniel's defenders can see what he is. But here's where it gets complicated, and this is where I need you to stay with me, because this is the part that separates good true crime analysis from sensationalism. Does being a terrible boyfriend mean Daniel Martel harmed Lily and Jack? No, it doesn't. Not directly. You can be the worst partner in the world, controlling and manipulative and emotionally abusive, and still have absolutely nothing to do with two children vanishing. The two things are not automatically connected. But, and this is a massive but, understanding who Daniel is helps us understand everything else about this case. It explains why Malaya left him on May 3rd, less than 24 hours after reporting her children missing. People crucified her for that. How could a mother leave when her children are missing? What kind of person does that? Now we know. Now we understand. Imagine being Malaya. Your children vanish. You report them missing. The entire weight of law enforcement, search and rescue, media attention, it all descends on your life in an instant. And standing next to you is Daniel Martel. The man who isolated you from your friends. The man who controlled who you could talk to. The man who made you feel small and dependent. And now, in the biggest crisis of your life, you see an opportunity. The house is full of police. There are witnesses everywhere. There is a reason to leave that nobody can question. So you take it. You grab that chance and you run, because you know if you don't leave now, you might never escape. That's not a mother abandoning her missing children. That's a domestic violence victim recognizing a narrow window of safety and diving through it. Does it look bad? Absolutely. Did people judge her for it? Brutally. But now that we know the pattern, now that we see who Daniel really is, it makes sense. tragic, horrible sense. Let's talk about Daniel's behavior since May 2nd, because this is where the self-sabotage becomes obvious. From day one, Daniel positioned himself as the hero of this story. He was the only one searching. He was the only one who cared. He would look for Lilly and Jack for the rest of his life. He gave interview after interview. He talked to content creators. He sent messages and screenshots to people online. He made himself the center of the narrative. And at first, some people saw this as a grieving stepfather doing everything he could. But others, people with experience in psychology, people who understand behavior patterns, they saw something else. They saw someone who needed control. Someone who needed attention. Someone who was manipulating the media the same way he manipulated his girlfriends. Dr. Vona, a psychologist who has analyzed this case, pointed out that Daniel's behavior fits a specific profile. When new information comes out, Daniel goes into damage control mode. He doesn't react like an innocent person who has nothing to hide. He reacts like someone who is trying to manage a narrative. And that makes him look guilty even if he isn't. There's a concept in psychology called behavioral congruence. It means your actions should match your stated intentions. If you say you're doing everything to find missing children, then your behavior should reflect that single-minded focus. But Daniel's behavior doesn't match. He's in relationships. He's fighting with girlfriends online. He's sending screenshots and trying to control what content creators say about him. He's creating drama and controversy instead of stepping back and letting the investigation proceed. What? If this is really about finding Lilly and Jack, why is Daniel spending so much energy on anything else? Sonny from It's a Crime and Shame said it perfectly. At what point do you stop, Daniel? At what point do you realize you're sabotaging everything in your life by what you're doing? You have 2 missing children and you're involving yourself in stuff like this. It's getting thicker and thicker on him. She's right. Every time Daniel opens his mouth, every time he sends a message, every time he tries to control the narrative, he makes himself look worse. And the tragedy is, if he is innocent, he's destroying his own credibility. If he had nothing to do with Lilly and Jack's disappearance, his behavior is ensuring that people will always suspect him. That's the sabotage. That's what self-destruction looks like. Here's a question I want you to think about and drop your answer in the comments. Why does Daniel need to be in the spotlight? What is he getting from this attention? Some people suggested that for the first time in his life, Daniel Martel is getting the kind of attention he's always craved. He's not just some guy in a small town in Nova Scotia anymore. He's at the center of a missing persons case that has captured attention across the country. Content creators talk about him. People debate whether he's innocent or guilty. His name is everywhere. And for someone with low self-esteem, for someone who bolsters himself by controlling vulnerable women, this kind of attention might be intoxicating. It might be exactly what he needs, even if it destroys him in the process. But let's be fair. Let's consider the alternative. What if Daniel really is innocent? What if he genuinely has no idea what happened to Lilly and Jack, and he's just a deeply flawed person who handles stress badly? That's possible. In fact, statistically, it's very possible. Most missing children cases, especially cases involving young children who disappear from rural areas, they aren't abductions. They aren't murders. They're tragic accidents. Children wander off. They get disoriented. They succumb to the elements. Search teams look in the wrong places. Weeks turn into months. The children are never found, or they're found years later by hunters or hikers, miles from where anyone thought to search. It happens again and again. Summer Wells in Tennessee. Sebastian Rogers, also in Tennessee. These cases follow the same heartbreaking pattern. So maybe that's what happened here. Maybe Lilly and Jack wandered away from the property in Lansdowne Station. Maybe they got outside the search area before anyone realized they were gone, and maybe they're out there somewhere waiting to be found. If that's true, then Daniel's behavior is just noise. It's a distraction. It's a troubled man making bad choices under unimaginable pressure. But it's not evidence of guilt. So why do so many people, including me, find it so hard to give Daniel the benefit of the doubt? I'll tell you why. Because of what he is. Not what he might have done, but what we know he is. He's a man who preys on vulnerable women. He's a man who isolates and controls. He's a man who lies. He says he never lies, but that in itself is a lie. He told social media one thing about Lily's blanket being in the garbage, but apparently told police something different. What? If you're innocent, if you have nothing to hide, why would you lie to social media? What possible reason could there be, except to control the narrative? Malaya said it herself. Her family never knew the blanket was in the garbage. They didn't even know Lily's blanket existed. Daniel kept that information compartmentalized. He controlled who knew what. And that's what he does. That's his pattern. Here's something else that should bother you. Daniel and Malaya both took polygraph tests. They both passed. But we don't know what questions they were asked. The court documents that were released in August, they're heavily redacted. The polygraph questions are blacked out. And that matters. It matters because you can pass a polygraph and still be involved in a crime, depending on how the questions are worded. Let me give you an example. If the question is, did you physically harm Lily and Jack, and the answer is no, that's truthful. But it doesn't mean you don't know what happened to them. It doesn't mean you weren't negligent. It doesn't mean you didn't cover something up. Polygraphs are tools, not truth serums. They measure physiological responses to questions. They can be beaten. They can be passed by people who are guilty and failed by people who are innocent. So the fact that Daniel passed a polygraph without knowing what he was asked, it doesn't clear him. It just means he answered specific questions in a way that didn't trigger the machine. If you're still watching, thank you. I know this is heavy. I know it's complicated. But cases like this, they deserve more than sound bites and hot takes. They deserve nuance. They deserve respect. And Lily and Jack deserve to have their names said. So say them with me in the comments. Lilly Sullivan. Jack Sullivan. Let's make sure they're not forgotten. And if you haven't liked this video yet, do it now, because engagement tells the algorithm to push this story to more people, and more people means more chance someone knows something, someone saw something, someone can help. Let's talk about what we do know. On the morning of May 2nd, Malaya reported Lily and Jack missing at 10:01 a.m. She told RCMP that she last saw them at 9:30 p.m. the night before. They were in their beds. Daniel was there. He was supposed to be watching them. The next morning they were gone. The RCMP launched a massive search. Volunteers poured in. Search and rescue teams scoured the woods around the property. Helicopters flew overhead. Divers searched bodies of water. And nothing. No sign of Lily. No sign of Jack. As days turned into weeks, searchers found two things. A blanket that belonged to Lily, found at a site away from the house. And a boot print, found at another site. Both locations were designated as priority areas. The blanket site. The boot print site. And in recent weeks, cadaver dogs were brought in from British Columbia to do a 3-day search of those locations, plus the property itself. We don't know what those dogs found. That information hasn't been released. But the fact that they brought in cadaver dogs, dogs specifically trained to detect human remains, that tells us something. It tells us that investigators are considering the possibility that Lily and Jack are no longer alive. That possibility breaks my heart. Probably breaks yours too. But we have to consider it. We have to look at this case with clear eyes, even when it hurts. 5 months. Lily and Jack have been missing for over 5 months. The chances of finding them alive decrease with every day that passes. That's not pessimism. That's reality. And if they did wander into the woods and succumb to exposure or injury, the question becomes, why haven't they been found? Searchers covered a massive area. They used every tool available. Trained professionals, volunteers, technology, dogs. How could 2 small children simply vanish? The answer might be simpler than we want to believe. Search areas are determined by assumptions. Assumptions about how far a child can walk. Assumptions about the direction they would go. Assumptions about their behavior. But if those assumptions are wrong, if Lily and Jack went a different direction, moved faster than expected, got farther than anyone thought possible, then searchers could have been looking in the wrong place from the beginning. It's happened before. It'll happen again. And if that's what happened here, Lily and Jack could be out there, miles from the search area, and it might be years before someone stumbles across them. But there's another possibility. One that involves Daniel. One that involves negligence or worse. And that's where the controversy lives. That's where people can't agree. Because we don't have evidence. We have behavior. We have patterns. We have red flags. But we don't have proof. And in the absence of proof, we're left with questions. Why did Daniel lie about the blanket? Why is he so controlling? Why does he need to manage every aspect of how this case is perceived? Why can't he just step back and let investigators do their job? These questions don't prove guilt. But they don't inspire confidence in innocence either. They leave us stuck in the middle, unsure, suspicious, frustrated. And that's exactly where Daniel's behavior has put us. That's the sabotage. Whether he's innocent or guilty, Daniel Martel has made it nearly impossible for anyone to trust him. And in a case where trust matters, where cooperation matters, where truth matters, that might be the most destructive thing he could have done. We'll continue in a moment, but first, if this case has gripped you the way it's gripped me, make sure you're subscribed. We cover cases that matter, cases that deserve attention, and we do it with respect and depth. Hit that subscribe button now. Let's go back to May 2nd. Let's try to understand what happened that morning, as much as we can from the information that's been made public. Malaya Brooks Mary woke up and discovered that Lily and Jack were not in their beds. She immediately reported them missing. The timeline is important here. She last saw them at 9:30 p.m. on May 1st. She reported them missing at 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd. That's roughly 12 and a half hours. 12 and a half hours in which two young children could have woken up, left the house and wandered into the woods. Or 12 and a half hours in which something else happened. Something we don't want to think about. Daniel was there that night. He was supposed to be watching the children while Malaya slept. This is according to the information that's been released. So if the children wandered away, it happened on Daniel's watch. Does that make him responsible? In terms of negligence, possibly. In terms of criminal liability, that's a much higher bar. But it explains why so much focus has been on Daniel from the very beginning. He was there. He was the adult in charge. And now the children are missing. When RCMP began their investigation, they interviewed both Malaya and Daniel extensively. They asked for polygraph tests. Both agreed. Both passed. But as I mentioned earlier, we don't know what questions they were asked. The court documents released in August show that Daniel answered questions about the case, but the specific content of those questions is redacted, blacked out, hidden from public view. What? The official reason is to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. And that makes sense. You don't want to reveal investigative details that could compromise the case. But it's frustrating for those of us trying to understand what really happened. It's frustrating for the public who wants justice for Lily and Jack. Here's what we do know from those court documents. The RCMP took this case seriously from day one. They treated the property as a potential crime scene. They collected evidence. They interviewed witnesses. They deployed massive resources to search for the children. And they identified 3 key locations. The main property where Lily and Jack lived. The blanket site where Lily's blanket was found. And the bootprint site where a suspicious bootprint was discovered. These 3 locations became the focus of the investigation. Searchers went over them again and again. But still no sign of the children. In recent weeks, the RCMP made a significant move. They brought in cadaver dogs from British Columbia. These aren't just any search dogs. Cadaver dogs are specifically trained to detect the scent of human decomposition. They can find remains that are buried, submerged, or hidden in dense vegetation. The fact that RCMP brought these dogs in tells us they're considering the worst-case scenario. They're looking for bodies. The dogs spent 3 days searching the property, the blanket site, and the bootprint site. And then they left. We haven't been told what, if anything, they found. But the silence is deafening. If the dogs had found nothing, would RCMP announce that to ease public concern? Maybe. Or maybe they're keeping their findings close to the chest while they build a case. We don't know. And that uncertainty feeds speculation. It feeds theories. It feeds the controversy that Daniel has become the center of. Let's talk about that controversy. Because this is where Daniel's behavior becomes most problematic. From the moment this case went public, Daniel has been talking. He's given interviews to news outlets. He's spoken to content creators on YouTube and other platforms. He's sent messages and screenshots to people online. And in doing so, he's created a narrative. Daniel's narrative is that he's the only one really searching for Lily and Jack. He's the only one who cares. He's the grieving stepfather who will never give up. Everyone else, including Malaya, they're not doing enough. They're not committed. They're not worthy of trust. It's a compelling narrative if you don't look too closely. But when you do look closely, it falls apart. Daniel claims he's searching, but where's the evidence? Content creators who have followed this case closely, people like the narrator whose video we're basing this on, they point out that Daniel spends an awful lot of time on social media for someone who's supposedly out in the woods looking for missing children. He's in relationships. He's fighting with girlfriends. He's managing his image. He's trying to control what people say about him. That's not the behavior of someone singularly focused on finding missing children. That's the behavior of someone who needs attention and control. And that's the pattern we keep coming back to. Control. It's who Daniel is. It's what he does. He controlled Malaya. He controlled Taylor. And now he's trying to control the public perception of this case. But here's the thing about control. The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. Every time Daniel tries to manage the narrative, he reveals more about himself. Every interview, every message, every screenshot, it's another piece of the puzzle. And the picture that's emerging isn't flattering. It's the picture of a man who is more concerned with how he looks than with finding the truth. Now, does that mean he harmed Lily and Jack? No. But it means we can't trust what he says. It means we have to question his motives. It means we have to look at his behavior with a critical eye and ask, what is he really doing here? One of the most telling moments came during a live stream with DT, the content creator who believes in Daniel's innocence. Even DT, who has given Daniel every benefit of the doubt, admitted that Daniel's behavior with his girlfriends is problematic. He called Daniel a douchey boyfriend. He acknowledged that Daniel is controlling, jealous, and isolating. These are big red flags, he said. 100%. And then DT said something really important. He said he wondered if Daniel might have a personality disorder. He was speculating, not diagnosing, but it's a reasonable question. Does Daniel's pattern of behavior suggest something deeper than just being a bad boyfriend? Could there be a clinical explanation for why he acts the way he does? Personality disorders, particularly those in Cluster B, which includes narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder, they're characterized by patterns of behavior that harm relationships. People with these disorders often have an intense need for control. They manipulate others. They lack empathy. They see people as objects to be used rather than individuals to be respected. They create chaos and drama, and they're often at the center of conflict wherever they go. Does this sound like Daniel? To some extent, yes. But we have to be careful. We can't diagnose someone we've never met. We can only observe behavior and note patterns. And the pattern with Daniel is clear. He controls vulnerable women. He lies to social media while apparently telling police something different. He positions himself as the hero while attacking anyone who questions him. He creates controversy and drama instead of stepping back. These are all behaviors that raise questions. They don't answer them, but they raise them. Let's get back to Malaya for a moment, because understanding her helps us understand the whole case. Malaya has been criticized mercilessly. People have called her a bad mother. They've questioned why she left Daniel so quickly after reporting her children missing. They've analyzed her every word, every action, every decision. And some of that criticism is fair. There are questions about supervision. There are questions about the home environment. There are questions about whether Lilly and Jack were adequately protected. But now that we know more about Daniel, now that we understand the kind of relationship Malaya was in, we can see her actions in a different light. This wasn't a mother abandoning her children. This was a domestic violence victim seizing a rare opportunity to escape. Think about what it takes to leave an abusive relationship. It's not as simple as just walking out the door. Abusers isolate their victims. They cut them off from friends and family. They make them financially dependent. They undermine their self-esteem until the victim believes they can't survive on their own. And then, on top of all that, there's the fear. Fear of what the abuser will do if you try to leave. Fear of retaliation. Fear of violence. Many domestic violence victims have tried to leave multiple times before they finally succeed. And the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when the victim tries to leave. That's when abusers escalate. That's when violence happens. So when Malaya saw her chance on May 3rd, with police and investigators swarming the property, with witnesses everywhere, with a legitimate reason to leave that no one could question, she took it. Can we blame her for that? I don't think we can. Not anymore. Not now that we know what Daniel is. Malaya made an impossible choice. Stay with Daniel and face continued abuse, or leave and face public judgment for abandoning her missing children. She chose to leave. And yes, it looks bad. Yes, people have judged her harshly. But it was also an act of self-preservation. It was survival. And maybe, just maybe, Malaya knew something we're only starting to figure out now. Maybe she knew that Daniel would make this case about himself. Maybe she knew he would create drama and controversy. Maybe she knew that the best thing she could do for herself and for the investigation was to get away from him and let the professionals do their job. A few days ago, Malaya released a statement through an organization called Please Bring Me Home. She didn't read it herself. Someone else read it for her. And people criticized that too. Why can't she speak her own words? Why does someone else have to read her statement? But if you listen to the words, if you feel the grief and the sorrow in them, it doesn't matter who's reading. What matters is the message. Malaya is grieving. She's heartbroken. She misses her children. And she's doing it in the only way she can, given everything she's been through. Some people can stand in front of a camera and pour their hearts out. Other people can't. That doesn't make their grief any less real. Here's a question I want you to consider, and drop your thoughts in the comments. How would you handle this situation? If your children were missing, if you were in an abusive relationship, if the whole world was watching and judging your every move, what would you do? Would you be able to stand in front of cameras and speak? Would you be able to hold it together? Or would you crumble? Would you need someone else to speak for you? There's no right answer. Everyone handles trauma differently. And we need to remember that when we judge people like Malaya. We need to remember that we're not in her shoes. We don't know what she's been through. We don't know the full story. All we can do is try to understand and have compassion. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The possibility that Daniel is involved in Lily and Jack's disappearance. I've been on the fence about this from the beginning. I can see how the children could have wandered away and simply not been found. It happens. Search teams miss things. Kids get farther than anyone thinks possible. The woods are vast and unforgiving. But I can also see how Daniel's behavior raises serious questions. His need for control. His pattern of manipulation. His lies about the blanket. His constant presence in the media instead of in the woods searching. All of it adds up to something that doesn't feel right. But not feeling right isn't evidence. It's not proof. And in a justice system that's supposed to presume innocence, we can't convict someone based on feelings. So where does that leave us? It leaves us waiting. Waiting for the RCMP to finish their investigation. Waiting to see if the cadaver dogs found anything. Waiting for the court documents to be fully unsealed so we can see those polygraph questions. Waiting for any new information that might point us toward the truth. And while we wait, we keep saying their names. Lily Sullivan. Jack Sullivan. We keep their story alive. We keep pressure on investigators to find answers. Because that's what they deserve. That's what every missing child deserves. If you're still with me, thank you. I know this isn't easy to listen to. It's not easy to talk about either. But if you care about this case, if you want to see justice for Lily and Jack, then show that by liking this video and leaving a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me where you're watching from. Let's build a community of people who won't let these children be forgotten. We'll be right back with the final part of this story. 5 months have passed since Lily and Jack Sullivan were reported missing. 5 months of searching. 5 months of questions. 5 months of controversy. And still no answers. The woods around Lansdowne Station have been combed by professionals and volunteers alike. Helicopters have flown overhead. Dogs have tracked scents. Divers have searched water. And yet, 2 small children have simply vanished. How is that possible? How can a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old disappear so completely that not a single trace of them can be found? The answer might lie in the assumptions searchers made at the beginning. When a child goes missing, search and rescue teams use established protocols to determine where to look. They calculate how far a child of a certain age can travel. They consider terrain, weather, and likely behavior patterns. They create a search radius and focus their efforts within that radius. But what if those calculations are wrong? What if Lily and Jack, for some reason, moved faster or farther than expected? What if they went in a direction no one anticipated? Then the entire search area would be wrong. Searchers would be looking in the wrong place and the children could be miles away beyond the reach of the search grid. It's not anyone's fault. It's just a tragic miscalculation. And it happens more often.